So, what if I told you that a creature smaller than a grain of rice infects millions of people all over the world by living inside their intestines? Today, we're diving deep into the world of a microscopic parasite that has a massive and sometimes deadly impact. So, this is our star of the show, the adult Heterophyes. At its absolute biggest, it's just 1.7 millimeters long. I mean, that's small enough to fit on the head of a pin. But as we're about to see, its tiny size is no measure of the trouble it can cause. All right, so here's our game plan for this deep dive. First, we'll get to know this tiny fluke. Then, we'll track its journey across the globe, unravel its incredibly complex life cycle, understand the disease it causes, and finally, look at how we fight it and what the future holds. Okay, first things first. To really get a handle on this tiny creature, we need to know exactly what it is. And, just as importantly, what it isn't. Okay, so first off, Heterophyes is what we call an endoparasite, which is just a fancy way of saying it lives inside its host, specifically our small intestine. And this part is really crucial. It's a metazoan. We're not talking about a single-celled blob here like an amoeba. No, you need to think of this as a complex, multicellular animal with its own miniature organs all operating inside of us. And this taxonomic chart, well, it's basically the parasite's family tree. It really puts our little fluke in its place, right? You can see it's a type of flatworm, part of the Trematoda class, along with all the other parasitic flukes. Now, this isn't just trivia. This classification is like a blueprint that helps scientists understand its biology and predict how it's going to behave. All right, so we know what it is. Now let's talk about where it is. This little guy has a surprisingly massive global footprint, and its story is totally tied up with human culture and what we eat. Yeah, this parasite's world map is basically drawn by two key things: brackish water, where its first host lives, and culinary traditions. It's endemic to places like the Nile Delta and parts of the Middle East. A close cousin, Heterophyes nocens, is really common in East Asia. So what's the common thread here? Well, it's a love for dishes made with raw, undercooked, or even just lightly salted fish that's pulled from these specific waters. Now, this comparison is super interesting. It really tells a story. In a place like Egypt, the infection is local, it's part of the ecosystem. But then you look at the Netherlands, and the parasite basically hits a dead end. Why? Because it's missing a key partner in crime. Its specific snail host just doesn't live there. This means every single case in the Netherlands is an imported one, a traveler's unwanted souvenir. And for a doctor trying to make a diagnosis, that is an absolutely vital clue. Okay, now for what I think is the most fascinating part: its life cycle. You really have to think of it like a biological heist movie. It's this super complex operation that requires a whole series of specific hosts or accomplices to pull it off. And here it is, the whole operation laid out for us thanks to the CDC. I know, it looks complicated, but it's an incredibly clever survival strategy. You can see all the key players right there: the snail, the fish, and then finally a mammal or a bird as the final host. So let's follow the trail step by step. It all kicks off with microscopic eggs passed in the feces of an infected host. Step 1. These eggs get eaten by a very specific type of snail. Inside that snail, the parasite goes into overdrive, asexually reproducing to create an army of these little free-swimming larvae called Cercariae. These guys get released into the water, and now they're on the hunt for their next victim, a fish. They burrow right into the fish's muscle, form a little protective cyst, and then they just wait. That tiny cyst is the loaded weapon just waiting to infect us. And this is where things get really tricky. You might think, okay, I'll just avoid raw fish, but it's not always that simple. The infective stage of this parasite, that little cyst, it's shockingly tough. It can actually survive for up to a whole week, even in salted fish, which is a super common way of preserving food in many of these regions. That resilience, that's exactly why this thing is such a persistent problem. So we've seen how the infection happens. Now, what actually happens inside the human body when this tiny invader sets up shop in our small intestine? For a lot of people, especially if it's a light infection, they might not feel anything at all. But when symptoms do show up, usually about 9 days after eating that contaminated fish, they're pretty much what you'd expect from something irritating your gut. Abdominal pain, that nasty colicky diarrhea, nausea, and just feeling wiped out and unwell as the flukes latch onto the intestinal wall. But look, those gut symptoms, they're unpleasant for sure, but they aren't usually life-threatening. The real and often hidden danger of this parasite comes from something else entirely. It's not the adult fluke we need to worry about most. It's the eggs. See, when the adult worms lay their eggs, some of them can actually break through the intestinal wall and get swept into the bloodstream. And from there, they're like these tiny little drifters that can go anywhere in the body. If they get lodged in the heart, they can cause really dangerous inflammation. That's myocarditis. If they make it to the brain, the body tries to wall them off, creating these lesions called granulomas that can lead to serious neurological problems. And in the absolute worst case scenarios, this journey leads to fatal heart failure. That is how a tiny 1.7 millimeter fluke becomes a killer. Okay, so we know just how dangerous this parasite can be. So how do we find it? And what can we do to fight back? Let's take a look at the tools of modern medicine. Well, the standard way is to look for eggs in a stool sample, but honestly, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. The eggs are absolutely tiny, and they look almost identical to eggs from other, sometimes less harmful flukes. Now, advanced DNA tests are way more accurate at telling the species apart, but they just aren't available everywhere you need them. And other tests that look for our body's immune reaction, they can get confused and cross-react with other types of worms, giving you a false positive. The good news is we do have a very effective weapon, a drug called praziquantel. It's the go-to treatment pretty much everywhere, and the dosage is standard, whether you're looking at CDC guidelines or the ones in the Netherlands. But, and this is a huge but, there's a critical catch. The treatment can fail in up to 30% of cases. That's a massive number, right? It means that follow-up is absolutely essential to make sure the parasites are really, truly gone for good. So while treatment is great to have, preventing the infection in the first place is obviously the best strategy. So let's talk about how to stay safe, and then we'll peek at what scientists are working on next. The advice here is actually pretty simple, but it's super effective. If you're traveling in an area where this is common, you've got to thoroughly cook all fresh and brackish water fish. You really want to avoid those traditional dishes that use raw, pickled, or lightly salted fish. And another good tip, proper freezing can also kill the parasite. It's all about breaking that final step in its life cycle before it gets to you. And the science here is always moving forward. Right now, researchers are uncovering the parasite's really sophisticated stealth tactics. It turns out it can actually send out these signals that calm down parts of our immune system, basically telling our body's defenses to just ignore it. By creating this kind of friendly environment for itself, it makes sure it can survive and reproduce for a long, long time. Cracking that code could be the key to developing even better treatments down the road. Whew, we've covered a lot of ground today, pulling together information from leading health organizations and scientific papers. For anyone who really wants to geek out and dive deeper into the research, we've put a complete list of our sources in the Notebook LM document that's linked right there in the description for you. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? In a world of constant travel, where our food crosses oceans in a day, that line between a regional problem and a global health issue is getting blurrier all the time. It really makes you wonder, what other so-called rare parasites are now just a plane ride or a dinner plate away? If you found this explainer interesting, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever thought about food safety in this way when traveling? Thanks so much for watching.